President Sabal here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Ayman and your team and Maat for hosting us here today. It's an important occasion and a project that has been quite some time in preparation, and I think there are many aspects to this project which will find common cause with many parts of the society here in Egypt and certainly in Europe. Now, it's nearly 5 years since the Egyptian people came out on the streets and pressed for freedom, for dignity and social justice. And throughout that period, the EU has stood by this country, lending support to the transition, and we remain fully committed to helping this country succeed. And it must succeed. It absolutely must succeed. The success of Egypt is the success of our region, our common region, our Euro-Mediterranean region. The roadmap adopted in 2013, as you know, included a number of innovations, and we saw an overwhelming vote in favour of the new constitution in the referendum on the 14th and 15th of January of 2014. That, I think, was a major step forward in the roadmap process, and that process, of course, has now been completed with the election and the inauguration of the parliament. So Egypt, civil society in the fullest sense of the term, is now fully back in business. One of the most important achievements of the new constitution was that it obligated the state to promote and guarantee equality between men and women in all civil, political, economic, social and cultural rights. And it provided protection to women from any form of violence. That, added to the fact that we see that 89, no less than 89 women are now members of parliament, and that's the highest female representation by a long way in Egypt's history. All of this has given real hope for women's empowerment here in this country, bearing in mind that they have faced decades of systematic discrimination in law and in practice. So a major step forward there in a huge area of rights, which I know forms part of the process of the UPR as well, and we should keep that in mind. I think Egypt really has made tremendous progress there. Still a lot to do, but it's important to mention that. As importantly, the Constitution strengthened protection for all citizens and prohibiting discrimination apart from gender, discrimination on religion, on belief, race, creed, colour, language, disability, for the first time I think there, or indeed social class. And the scope of these protections are in accordance with standards set by international law, and again are unprecedented in this country. While no constitution anywhere can ever be perfect, it is generally agreed that this one represents very significant improvements, notably in the human rights chapter, as compared to its predecessors. And let's not forget the numbers that came out and voted for it in 2014. These new rights and freedoms, whether political, social or economic, granted by the Constitution, without any question can and I'm sure will improve the everyday lives of Egyptians and be a major force for sustainable stability. But for that to happen, it is of course crucial that existing and future legislation is in compliance with that Constitution. And in achieving that, one of the most important tools at hand is indeed the Universal Periodic Review, the UPR. The main goal of the UPR is, of course, to bring about the improvement of the human rights situation on the ground all over the world. And in doing that, the follow-up to UPR recommendations is a very key activity. And that, of course, is what this project is really all about. As Ayman has said, Egypt underwent its second Universal Periodic Review last year, November the 5th, and the 3-hour session resulted in over 300 recommendations, of which I think was mentioned over 200 were accepted by Egypt. Most of those recommendations focused on a set of rights, especially those relating to peaceful demonstrations and assembly, and that of course brought into question the protest law and the association law, and recommendations were made to bring them into compliance with international law. Several delegations also raised the ill treatment in detention, the need for greater media freedom, and the need to uphold and extend the rights of women and children. And there were more besides. But notwithstanding the views of the international community, we should really remember, and what is most important here is that most of these concerns are actually addressed in this country's own, very own constitution. It designates all forms of torture as a crime, it guarantees freedom of expression, it guarantees gender equality, it bans child labour, and much else besides. That's an Egyptian document, that's not an international document, that's what the people voted for. That is what is important. Now the challenge, of course, above all, for the new parliamentarians, and I'm very pleased to see that Maat is working with the Parliament, and I know that you have parliamentarians involved in the project. The challenge for them is to ensure that the rights enshrined in that constitution are translated into law and duly upheld by the state. Now, of course, this is no easy task. When one takes account of recent history and the many challenges that Egypt faces, especially in security right now. And we all know, getting the balance right between liberties on the one hand and keeping citizens safe on the other is never easy, wherever you are in the world. And the road to democracy is neither easy nor short. It was not so on our own continent in Europe, neither earlier in the 20th century, nor later, after 1989, when Eastern Europe came into play. And even when you get there, that is to say, that you achieve your democracy, getting the balance between liberty and security right will always be difficult, and we've seen that just recently in the European Union. This past year, as we've had to deal in France, in other countries too, with terror attacks in our own societies. But for our part, let me assure you that we know that the undermining of our liberty, which is the essence of our society and the very heartbeat of the stability that we enjoy, the undermining of that liberty is exactly what the perpetrators of those attacks want. And we know that this must at all costs be resisted. So it's not just about the inherent good in human rights, it's also about the very bedrock of stability of our society. And I think the same is true all over the world, wherever we are. But there is a special challenge, we know it here in Egypt, and we've got to remember that, and I'm sure it will make it more difficult perhaps than some other places in the next year or two. That is not to say that the effort should not be made. And let me just say that the EU remains fully committed in our support for this country, not only bilaterally but also as a UN member state. And of course, let's not forget that Egypt is a founder member of the UN and one of the most engaged in the UN, especially at the moment with the Security Council membership of this country, and has always engaged fully in the UPR review, which I think is very good, and I'm sure will continue to do so. We're very pleased that Maat is working on the civil society side to see that everything can be done to follow through on those recommendations. And it's a privilege for us to be working with you on that goal for the good of this country and for the good of our region and indeed for the good of the international community at large. Thanks very much for listening to me this morning. I wish you well. I wish you a good discussion and a good day.